Welcome to Level with Emily. This is a conversation with Dylan Wiest, who is the director and the drummer for the OC Jazz Collective, which is a collection of video game music remixers who are also fabulous jazz musicians. And they get together and they've made this wonderful album that's brand new called Mode 7, a jazz tribute to the SNES. So, as you can imagine, there's jazz arrangements of really great SNES music, like Mario Paint, Final Fantasy VI, Super Metroid, and features arrangements and or performances from some really amazing musicians in the remix community, like Andy P., John Stacey, Nasylvania, and Insane in the Rain Music. So it's really a fantastic album. Dylan didn't have a working webcam at the time we spoke, so no video for this one, but that means you get to hear the music as we intend you to in the audio podcast. So when we don't have video, we just plop the audio podcast version right on up on YouTube, so you'll get to hear that this time. And yeah, check it out. Mode 7, a jazz tribute to the SNES is what it's called. Join us on Discord to talk about this and other episodes. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you're able to support us financially, visit patreon.com/level. All right, here is Dylan Wiest. Welcome to Level with Emily. This is a performance by the OC Jazz Collective from their new album called Mode 7, a jazz tribute to the SNES. As you might expect, the album features jazz arrangements of tunes from the SNES era. Dylan Wiest is the director of the group, and he's also the drummer. Dylan goes by Wiestly in the remix world, and he's been a part of the OC Remix community for a very long time, pre-2010. OC Remix itself has been around since 1999, and we'll talk about that briefly in this conversation, but Dylan's been a part of it for a long time. This album features, music from like Mario Paint, Super Metroid, Final Fantasy VI, and incredible arrangements, either featuring or done by performers and remixers like Andy P., John Stacey, Nasylvania, Insane in the Rain Music. We've had on the show. John Stacey also has been on the show because he's a part of the Game Brass. Anyway, it's a fantastic album. And OC Remix, I just want to say, he says this at the very end of the interview, but it's important to say that you can get all of this music at no cost. OC Remix believes that, this music should be available to everyone. So you can download this music for free from OC Remix anytime. And you can also donate to their Patreon if you want to support them that way. But otherwise, the music, just go grab it. It's fantastic and well worth it. Join us on Discord to talk about this and other episodes. Visit us on YouTube to see videos of most of our conversations. Not this one, but there are videos up from many of our conversations that we've had, at least in 2022. And if you're able to support us financially, you can visit us at patreon.com/level. All right, here is Dylan Wiest.
Yeah, my name is Dylan Wiest. My remixer handle on OC Remix is Wiesty. And I've been coordinating and directing the OC Jazz Collective since, I want to say about 2014, 2015 now. We released our first album back in 2016 entitled Chronology, which was a jazz tribute to Chrono Trigger. And then we just recently released Mode 7, which is a tribute to the Super Nintendo era of great video games and all the soundtracks that went with those. So yeah, it's been a journey doing some stuff for OC Remix, but as well as some community albums on OC Remix and the Materia Collective when they were releasing a lot of their community albums. So yeah, we've been at it for about 6 or 7 years now, and looking forward to what the future has in store.
For sure. One of the things I love about the remix community is it reminds me of the jazz world, but also hip hop community, where there's just everybody is on each other's album and everybody wants to play and make music together. And so there are names that I recognize that I've interviewed from the past, and just names that I recognize from the remix community, which is really fun. And, just speaks, I think, to just the excitement that you all have in the community to make music together. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these people that are in the OC Jazz Collective, whether they were, originally in the group when we released our first single, I think it must have been 2014 or 2013 now, or, the most recent album, I've known a lot of these people since at least 2008.
Amazing.
I was kind of lurking on the OC Remix forums and just kind of getting to know the community as far back as 2006, 2007, when I really got into all of this. And a lot of these musicians were, kind of in that same era. And it's just been a collection of meetings and friends that we've all got to know each other through our love of jazz as well, video game music. And it's really anybody and anyone on the OC Remix forums. I guess maybe more so through Discord now, because forums are, a bit of a dying thing. But I mean, we've all been a member of that community for a long time. There are a few people who I've met through Materia that have kind of jumped on board and have just kind of stepped in the last couple of years. But I think we've seen a bit of a diversification in terms of the remix community, over the last at least 4 or 5 years. There's a lot more happening all over the place, and just people releasing independently on YouTube, and it's really, really grown. Whereas I think OC Remix was that was the epicenter of all of this. Back to 1999, I think they got their start. So
amazing. I mean, in 1999, that was definitely a lifetime ago. But even when I think about 2008, that's when I moved to Minneapolis, and, doing a podcast about music and video games was nowhere near on my radar. I mean, that came 3 years later. So it's like, it's amazing to me to know that you've been in this community that long. And also, I mean, just OC Remix in general, but you as well, just in the mid-aughts kind of hopping in. And, if I think about someone like Insane in the Rain Music or Carlos Eni, I mean, how old would he have been? He would have been like 10 years old or something like that. And now he's like playing amazing, beautiful tenor solos on your album and on his own albums and all those things. So, I think too, just the quality and the depth of the playing field has really grown tremendously over the years.
Yeah, quality. I mean, if I think back to some of the original remixes that I did, just dabbling into the community back in whatever year that was, 2005, 2006, it was like using some old Yamaha mixer from the 1980s that I had like jimmy rigged some XLR outs to a 1/8 inch into a laptop, and quality was just terrible. But that is what home studios kind of looked like back in the day. And now we're at a point where like, a lot of people that we work with, either in OC Remix or in the professional community, like their studio is at home. Yeah. I think of like our alto player, Joe Zija, like he does a lot of voice acting. That is his main gig. And I mean, he runs almost all of that entirely out of his house. And 15 years ago, that was pretty unheard of.
I mean, the album is great. It's really fun. I love the varying styles. I love the various tributes you do to other jazz awesomeness. But yeah, just talk to me a little bit about the album and who did the arrangements, and we'll get into some more specifics after that.
Yeah, well, the album started as like pretty much, I would say, mid 2017. So this has been in the works for quite a while.
Wow, yeah.
Obviously with some hiccups in there, such as a global pandemic and whatnot. But we got started on this, I think, mid 2017, just as a follow-up to Chronology, which was our first album, just dealing with the soundtrack of Chrono Trigger. And I could talk about that for days, but we'll deal with Mode 7 for now. Wanting to diversify a little bit and kind of staying in that same era, which, I mean, to me, at least, the Super Nintendo and consoles that were kind of in that same era, that was, to me, like the golden age of video game music. And so we wanted to do something to kind of celebrate that. And it kind of worked out. We were hoping to originally hit like the 30th anniversary, and we missed that a little bit. So we ended up just kind of releasing it as a tribute, and wanting to bring in, some people from outside of the community or people who maybe were not a member of the OC Jazz Collective. So, this is where we had our collaboration with Insane in the Rain, as well as some other members such as Alejandro, who was a prominent remixer as well as musician in the Materia community at the time, and just kind of broadening the size of the group. And so just trying to, have a varied collection of, well-known classics such as, Super Metroid or Super Mario World, but also some, unknown gems. Alejandro brought a track from Live Alive, which, I mean, just got released on the Switch recently, but, up until, 5 months ago had never been released in North America, and same as the Dragon Ball Z remix that John Stacey did. Again, some stuff that on most people's North American palates had never been heard.
Yeah.
And so having a bit of a broader, I guess, scope there. Chronology, I guess, in many ways was a bit of a concept album, and it was a little bit shorter. And this was, I wanted this to be a little bit longer and have again more of a reach in terms of what we were hitting. The arrangers on it, we had quite a few. John Stacey, who is a member of the Game Brass, as well as a prominent remixer in both the OC Remix and Materia communities. Who else did we have arranged tunes on there? We talked a little bit about Alejandro, Nostalvania, Marcus, who is a piano player that got his start on OC Remix. In terms of the remix community, just a killer arranger. All of his arrangements always just like blow my hair back. It's crazy the stuff that he writes. So it was a long time in the works, and I was really, really stoked to finally get it out. And I think it was probably about a year prior to that was OC Remix's last release. So I think this is, kind of a good way to kind of kick the door open again, and hopefully we'll see more coming out from the OC Remix community.
And Dylan, you're a drummer, right? And a keyboardist.
Yeah. Traditionally, piano was my first instrument. Then I studied percussion, as well as did a lot of jazz drumming through university and beyond. And now teaching is mostly my main gig, but I still gig quite regularly in the jazz community here in Canada. So
tell me more about your teaching gig. What age level do you teach and that?
Oh, I teach all levels from beginner, so often that's grade 5 or 6, depending on where I'm teaching, and all the way up to grade 12. So,
wow.
Yeah. teach in Alberta, Canada, and a lot of my students have gone on to pursue music post-secondary, and teach jazz band, teach concert band, wind ensemble. Not much in terms of orchestra, because that's really not a huge thing here in Canada for the most part.
Yeah.
I know a lot of schools down in the States, that's a really big thing. But aside from little pockets here and there around Canada, it's never really taken off.
So let's talk about some of the individual tracks. For instance, Brushwork is great because it's got, I'm assuming you're the drummer in it. And
I am, yeah.
Just such great extended drum solos with not concert band stuff, with the jazz ensemble, and kind of like Buddy Rich or like a Duke Ellington tune or something like that, where you're leaving room for the drummer to be all tasty. And it's fun too that you're using brushes, right? Which is a fun little
yeah,
thing.
we were trying to come up with a name for that. Brian is the arranger for that one. He's a trombonist in the group, and just trying to come up with a name, and like nothing was sticking. And then it just hit like lightning one day. And not so much that it's a piece where the drummer uses brushes, I guess that's part of it, but you have the opening title screen or I think even on the cartridge for Mario Paint, it's got Mario holding the paintbrush, right? So it's a bit of a double entendre there. But yeah, there are definitely some influences going back to the big band era. That was a piece that I had kind of imagined, as well as Brian, being something that we would do, because it is basically a rip-off of a Count Basie tune called Cute, which was arranged by Neil Hefti, who was one of the prominent arrangers for the Count Basie band. So we just knew, based off how that original went, and almost in a way we thought that the original composer for the opening theme to Mario Paint was kind of hinting at that, so it was just like screaming at us that we had to arrange it in the style.
I'm just butting in here to let you know that this is that Count Basie tune that Dylan's talking about that inspired the OC Jazz Collective arrangement. So this is Count Basie and his orchestra playing the tune Cute.
Yeah, Brian did the initial arrangement, all the harmonizations and all of that, and then we kind of collaborated just kind of on a bit of the rhythmic stuff, as well as some of the solis and whatnot that went in there. And yeah, it's one of the only tunes on the album that is like full big band. There are not a lot of tunes that are full big band, but that's kind of Brian's forte, and he does a lot of big band playing. Myself personally, I've played in a lot of big bands and have definitely been a part of that world, but typically I've found myself in smaller combos and quartets and quintets more often than not, and it's usually what I cling to when I like to write. It's just a lot easier in many ways. You're just dealing with less voices, and simplicity is key often. So So I left the big band arranging to other people on the album, and they did a much, much better job than I definitely could have. But I was happy to lend a hand on this one with some of the arranging.
Yeah, you mentioned John Stacey did some arranging and that he did the arranging for the Dragon Ball Z track, which is funny because there's a big French horn solo in there, and John, I assume, played that French horn solo in there.
Yeah, John did play. There are two French horns on that track, and John plays them both. And
funny. Okay.
I know John has been a huge proponent of the French horn getting more spotlight as a jazz instrument because it's not very common out there, aside from, some arrangers such as like Gil Evans, back in the 50s and 60s, Bertha the Cool using French horn as a color instrument. You don't see it out there as much as, the other brass counterparts. So, yeah, and I know John does that quite often. So, and I if I'm correct, I believe that, on Alejandro's tune, the Live a Live tune, Megalomania, there is French horn in there, which I believe was originally written, if I'm not mistaken, for trombone, and then he rearranged it for French horn just because we're going to get John in on this track, so let's rewrite that trombone part for French horn. And that's how you could barely even tell because John plays with such a big brassy sound that often you think it is a trombone playing there. So.
Did he play trumpet too, though? Was he the screaming trumpet on like Red Soul and elsewhere throughout the album?
So we had two trumpets. John did lend some trumpet on the album. I believe John played perhaps a couple of the trumpets on the Brushwork tune.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. And I want to say one other, but I don't know which one offhand.
Okay.
But sorry, which one was the song that you mentioned?
I was talking about Red Soul.
Yeah, Red Soul. So I guess the trumpet player that we've been working with for a long time now, who played on all of Chronology as well as some other stuff that we've released, is Jordan Etienne.
Okay.
Who goes by Jay Damashi on OC Remix. He's also gone under handles such as Sir Jordanius, and so he's been playing with us for a long time. And then we just wanted to add a little bit more color as opposed to one person playing all of the trumpet parts, getting a couple people in there doing that. And so on a few of the tracks, that is split between John Stacey and Jordan.
Well, and you'd need a lead player, right? That's the thing that was surprising me so much. I was like, is John Stacey really able to... And maybe he is. And I've interviewed him once, but I'm not alone, and so I couldn't get in the nitty-gritty of his, brass technique. but I am, just as a trumpet player, quite aware that there's a different skill involved in being a lead player that can really just scream and wail up there so well,
Yeah, and I mean, that's definitely Jordan's specialty. There's a lot of screaming involved in his parts, and his high range chops are like
amazing.
Absurd.
So jealous.
But John, I think he plays just about every brass instrument. I know he's played a lot of trombone on other albums.
Amazing.
I think he's played some tuba as well, at least not with the OC Jazz Collective. We don't really have much tuba music that's written for us, but
sure.
I want to say that he has done a lot of tuba playing as well, but I won't speak for John.
Yeah, I also loved all the vibes work, and you had a couple different vibraphone players, right?
Just one.
Oh, just
believe.
One.
Yeah,
Did I really just see one? Oh, Doug Perry. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the one track that was actually written for two vibraphone parts.
That's maybe why I thought you had two vibraphones.
Yeah, and that's
tricky.
Megalovania.
Which was like my favorite track, so yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Alejandro writes such killer music.
Oh, so good.
as a Berkeley student, you kind of get into that Berkeley like modern jazz sound and scene, and it's just amazing the stuff the guy writes. But he was coming at me with some of the I guess pre-finished arrangement ideas, and was saying like, is this going to be playable by one player? And the vibraphone part he gave me was like essentially a piano part, and I'm like, I play quite a bit of vibraphone myself. When I gig locally here, I'm typically either playing drum set or vibes. And I said, I don't think so, but I mean, Doug is a different breed of vibraphone player than I am, so could be possible. So we sent it to Doug, and it's like, let's just write this for 2 different vibraphone parts, and I'll overdub that. But yeah, I mean, Doug is just a monster on really all percussion instruments, but mallets for sure. Like his marimba chops and his vibraphone chops are just, it's a little bit embarrassing when I look at the vibraphone stuff that I've done in the past, and I definitely I could lay down a lot of stuff for the OC Jazz Collective on vibes myself, but then I say like, we've got Doug available. Why would I do that to the listeners?
Yeah, he sounds great, and I'm sure that must be him on the Mega Man X or Mega Man 10 track, 22nd Century, because there's just this really great vibes line in there in the beginning, kind of an ostinato kind of thing happening.
Yeah, Doug. Yeah. Every track he was the vibes player. He also played a bit of hand percussion on a few of the tunes as well.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Conga and bongos, which was great to get him in on more than just vibes. Because if you've seen his live streams, he does a lot. I think every Monday or Wednesday. I want to say perhaps Mondays. Maybe it's changed, but he does like live performance live streams where he's like basically just making up music and improvising on the spot, and people will request video game tunes, and he'll arrange it for marimba on the fly. Like, it's crazy, but he has just like a cave of percussion instruments, and it's very, very impressive.
Nice. So did you all record remotely?
Yeah, everybody, as far as I know, we were recording just remotely in our kind of home studios or bedrooms, basements, whatever you want to call them.
Yep.
The only person that I know who would have like a semi-professional setup would be Joe, and that's because he does a lot of voice acting.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And so like he's got an entire like booth set up in his house that is studio quality and completely silent from the outside. And so Amazing. But as far as I know, everybody else is just recording from their home. And like I said, over the last 15 years, I don't know at what point it was that it became so accessible. It seems like it was something that happened slowly over time, but really they reached a point probably early 2010s, 2010, 2011, where like, you could get almost close to studio quality just, with some basic software and, an IO and a condenser mic. And it was just like night and day compared to what people were doing 15 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, coming from radio, it always used to be that if you wanted to get a good interview over distance, like you and I, right? I would either do a tape sync where I send someone to your house to record you and have to pay them for that, or we would have to send you to a studio to connect via ISDN, which was just a high-speed telephone line, right? So it was right around that time that you had the voice over internet protocol thing happen with like Skype and stuff where you could talk over the internet, and that just like wiped out the need almost overnight for such an expensive process to do a long distance recording. It's really amazing how you and I can talk like this and sound like we're in the same room without paying someone to make it sound like that. you know?
And how many radio hosts were working completely remote during the pandemic, and like,
me.
Did most people notice a difference? Like, not really.
I mean, not eventually. I mean, I think in the first couple weeks there were definitely some
hiccups,
some wrinkles we had to iron out. But literally the very first morning, I just turned on the Comrex, which was the piece of equipment that connected me to the studio remotely, and I was live on the air from my living room the day after shutdown. So, and to be fair, radio has been able to do that for a long time. Like, radio remotes have existed for a long time, but again, with expensive equipment, and it's just not as necessary to have giant, expensive equipment anymore.
and I think it's remarkable, just, the accessibility that it's provided to so many musicians out there.
Yep.
You go back to the 80s and you see all these old movies about, that band trying to get themselves a demo recorded. And that's, the whole premise of the movie. And now, like, wow, you walk into your music store with $200 or $300 and that's really all you need.
Yeah.
Now,
amazing.
I mean, obviously, to the trained ear and the audiophile who's got the $10,000 Bowers and Wilkins setup, you can tell a little bit of a difference when somebody's recorded it at, a studio in downtown New York versus their bedroom. Like, let's not completely kid ourselves, but it's still really remarkable what it's opened up in terms of people getting their work out there.
And there's some really great Barry sax work in there. Who doesn't love a great Barry sax honking away down in the basement? But the Super Mario World track, Gigantrius Koopalooza, has a really great just a little boop. And you're like, yes, that's what I needed in my day, was to hear that Barry sax down there doing that. So tell me a little bit about that. Yeah.
Joe Zija, once again, who plays... I want to say at one point he played all of the saxophones for the group, but that's not true because Anthony Lofton was also playing on our first couple of releases. And Joe does almost all of the alto Barry stuff. In fact, I think he does all the alto and Barry stuff. Just a monster player. He's one of the first guys that I kind of pulled into the Jazz Collective, like way back in the day when it was not even called the Jazz Collective.
Oh, fun.
Joe's, as well as being, an amazing writer and outstanding voice actor who's, gone on to do just like huge AAA titles with Nintendo and whatnot.
Nice.
He's also a killer woodwind player and guitarist and Renaissance man, I think is what he used to go under on his website. And it's true.
Wow.
The guy plays everything. We're actually doing, we're doing an album right now that he crowdsourced. I believe it's entitled Three Houses, Four Saxes, which is a kind of a tribute to the Fire Emblem Three Houses game, which he voice acted on.
Oh, nice.
And so we've been working on it for about a little over a year now, I want to say, and I'm doing all the arrangements on there for him.
Wow.
Insane in the Rain did arrange one track as well for the album, and it features Joe just playing basically every track, all saxophones. There's a little bit of rap in there as well. We got Mega Ran on one track with us, so we're slowly kind of releasing some things through Joe's YouTube channel right now.
Awesome.
And there's a planned release sometime in the near future.
you did a Final Fantasy VI tune and the style of this really great Oliver Nelson tune called Stolen Moments, and I loved that mashup. So I'd love to hear you talk to me a little bit about that one.
Yeah, I guess that's another one that goes back a long time. I have like these ideas that have made their way into other recordings and just like sat unused for almost a decade. So way back in the day, Joe and I were kind of the music directors, or working on the soundtrack for like an unofficial Final Fantasy VII web series that was being pitched.
Nice.
And it, like, at one point it had reached the front page of Kotaku and like millions of views on the YouTube video, and it was getting crowdfunded to get made. And so Joe and I were part of the music department for that, and we're just kind of making some material as kind of like bonus stuff for the Kickstarter. And so I wrote this piece called Variations to Chocobo. And it was a sax, and this is kind of the beginning of that whole sax quartet thing. It got started as Joe just playing four saxes, and it kind of took the Chocobo theme. And this is something that I always struggled with, because if you think of like the Chocobo theme that Uematsu wrote, like every one of those themes is a remix of the original Chocobo theme. So how do you remix a remix and remix like it was just a daunting task to have to arrange that tune. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, let's just make a bunch and we'll put them all into one. And I called it Variations to Chocobo. And so it was kind of like a theme and variations, where we took the main theme and then it kind of went through all the different eras of American popular music. So it started in like ragtime, and then it went to like 1950s, 1960s, like cool jazz era, and then kind of finished with like a dance 1980s, 1990s, like club pop sort of finish. And so I wrote that Variations to Chocobo as kind of like an homage to Oliver Nelson as well. And you'll hear, if you listen to that tune on this album, during the horn solo, kind of like 3/4 of the way through the tune, there is that Chocobo line is built into the solo on this tune. So that came like way back from 2012, 2013.
Wow.
And I was just thinking of like, what else can I use this? Because it's such a great tune, like the original, Blues in the Abstract Truth, like just one of the timeless albums ever written.
That's great.
And so I was thinking like, what other tunes can we throw over the same chord progression and make work, which is quite a common thing in the jazz community. It's called, I believe they're called contrafacts.
Yep.
Yeah. Where you're taking, I guess back to even like a basic thing like a blues, and writing, a different melody over a blues head, or I guess more complex would be like a rhythm changes, where you're, taking a rhythm changes tune, like I've Got Rhythm, and writing something entirely over top of that, which was, kind of the original jazz version of remixing back in the day.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
And so that's how that tune came to be. And I was just happy to finally get that material out there, because it had just been sitting, unused in the freezer for a long time. And
you kind of hinted a little bit to your background and stuff, but I would like to know more about like how you fell in love with jazz. When did that happen? Yeah,
I guess it's weird, because I have vivid memories thinking back to like elementary school, like saying the words "I hate jazz."
Really?
I was like a really snobby, like classic rock kid. Like it was like Jimi Hendrix and Pink Floyd and Rolling Stones and nothing else. And so jazz was like, what I thought was, as far as that had gone. And then, late elementary, high school kind of rolled around, and I was taking piano lessons at the time with this local piano teacher who was more than happy just to kind of let my interest in classic rock kind of like lead where I was going. But then, kind of just started sneaking some jazz in here and there and going, there's a lot of similarities. Like it's not too far fetched. And So kind of got on through there.
Cool.
You know, some kind of, I guess, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like segue bands like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, or Pink Floyd, or, you know, Deep Purple. Some of these bands that were experimenting with some of that at the time kind of took me in that direction. And I had been on OC Remix as early as 2006, 2007. So like a kid in grade 7, grade 8. And I just, you know, really, really nerdy into video game music. Still loved the Chrono Trigger soundtrack, which was super influenced by jazz and had just all this jazz, you know, built right into it. And then this band came along by the name of the One Ups. Like 2005, I think Volume 1 came out. So, you know, I think they just actually released their 25th anniversary vinyl that came out a while ago. I think they're really the original band to kind of do that. And they've done a lot of other stuff. It's not all just jazz, but their first album, Volume 1, was super, super heavy influenced by jazz. And I mean, we've got Anthony Lofton from that album playing on this one. And that was, you know, as soon as he agreed to join the OC Jazz Collective, that was just like, you know, a dream come true. And so just a lot of these great arrangements. And I had seen a video of the One Ups playing Secret of the Forest from Chrono Trigger. And it was like, I was just enthralled with that soundtrack at the time. And to see, you know, these musicians taking video game music as seriously as I was at the time, like it was just eye-opening. And so, you know, that was kind of, you know, my first step into like the jazz realm, I would say.
Okay. Oh, cool.
At least from a video game perspective. But,
yeah,
you know, obviously with my private piano teacher and, you know, my classic rock background, there's a lot of, you know, interplay there as well.
And, you know, you mentioned a few different times the Chrono Trigger, your Chronology album from 2016. I think you said 16 or 17?
2016, I'm pretty sure.
2016.
Yep.
And I really do want to spend more time with that before I ask you too much about it. So we'll have you back for that. But I do want you to talk a little bit about it here. And, you know, you said it's more of a concept album. So, you know, sometimes if I think about a concept album, I think of, you know, like tracks that segue or something, and that doesn't have to happen. But, you know, I'd like to hear you talk a little bit more about that album in particular, if you would.
Yeah. I guess that had been like at that point, the OC Jazz Collective had been around for maybe a year or two.
Okay.
It really started as, you know, on the OC Remix forums way back in the day. I think it was originally going to be called the OC Remix Big Band or something. And it was actually had like an entire roster of musicians that we were going to fill at every spot. I mean, we talked about earlier how I really don't arrange a lot for big band music. So that was a problem in itself. And just filling out all the spots seemed to be pretty challenging because at the time, I mean, I started the OC Jazz Collective as a bit of, you know, I was really getting into jazz writing and wanting to write for live musicians, and really not as common back in the day. You know, I was trying to write these jazz arrangements using VST instruments and MIDI, and just like, wow, this does not sound anywhere as near, you know, anywhere as good as I would like it to. So I'm going to have to get some actual musicians to do this. But at the time, I mean, the community, for the most part, live recorded performances were not the norm. There were definitely people doing them, but it was still very much that digital instruments and loop based and a lot of electronic instruments. And part of that has to do with the access to technology, because it was a lot easier to, you know, get a couple of MIDI instruments on your computer and record those with a MIDI keyboard than actually record. You know, nobody had that setup back in the day. And if they did, it wasn't the best quality. And so as that technology became available, I wanted to start this group, and we got a couple of singles out there. The first one we did was a tune from Legend of Zelda, the Windmill Hut theme we called it The Guru. and it was kind of like a John Coltrane, My Favorite Things exploration on the Windmill Hut theme from Ocarina of Time. But then right after that, as soon as we had our team assembled, and it was a little bit smaller of a crew than it was on this album, we started kind of getting to work on an album. And I knew that Chrono Trigger was going to be kind of our first dive into that, because a lot of people on the album, Chrono Trigger is just such the staple, our literature, I guess. You think of jazz musicians and like back to the Great American Songbook, and like for video game musicians, like Chrono Trigger is that songbook, back to that era. So like this material had to be done. And I know that, Mitsuda had already put out that acid jazz album entitled The Brink of Time, like I think a year or so after the original OST came out. But this was going to be kind of our first jump into doing a full feature album as opposed to just singles that we were doing. It's a rather small album. I think there's only 7 or 8 tracks, and one of them is actually one of Doug's groups that he was playing in at the time with some of his university colleagues. They did the main theme to Chrono Trigger. So that's not really even in the OC Jazz Collective. It's a bit of a guest appearance. But
cool.
Every other track on the album is directly related to one of the eras in Chrono Trigger.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
So for every era of the game, there is one track, and it's a song that only occurs in that era. So the album kind of takes you on a journey through the entire, I guess, journey of the Chrono Trigger crew.
Cool.
And yeah, there's just, I don't know, when you listen to that album from start to finish, it has like you kind of need to listen to it in order sort of feel. And a lot of that is I did a lot more of the arranging on the original album. We had less guest arrangers at the time. And so perhaps it kind of ties everything in together there, and that a lot of it is my writing. But that came out in 2016, and there was a lot of buzz about that at the time. And it's been a bit of a break in between. We've done some individual releases through Materia and OC Remix, but really just been getting to work on this one. And then again, we had that pandemic halfway through, and happy to finally have this out.
So Dylan, where do people buy it? How can people purchase this music?
So with OC Remix, the beautiful thing about OC Remix is that all of their albums are completely free.
Love that.
And so if you go onto their website, or the Mode 7 website, which I believe is mode7.ocremix.org, or just through the OC Remix main page, you'll get a link to the album's website, and you can download it through there. There's links to either torrents, or you can download direct or download individual tracks. I do believe, though, that we've actually got this one approved to be released through Spotify, and Apple Music and whatnot. So this one will be available for streaming. That being said, OC Remix does still keep all of their music free to release, and all proceeds from their Spotify streams and whatnot go to charities, because the original initiative of OC Remix was, making gay music free and accessible, and as a means to promote it, right? So not selling albums, because you'll reach a lot more people through, SoundCloud or YouTube streams, as opposed to selling albums at $20 or $25 a pop, which I think is a very Valorant thing to do, and they're still doing it.
And they can be supported. I believe OC Remix has a Patreon, so if you feel any kind of need to support OC Remix, you can do that, but that's pretty fantastic that this is available to everyone. So I highly encourage everyone to download it or stream it or however you want to possess it, but make this a part of your collection. It's well worth it. Dylan, what more do you want to say about this album or anything else?
Yeah, just that it's been, a pleasure getting to know all these musicians. Like I said, people like Anthony Lofton, who were some of my earliest influences getting into jazz, or Insane in the Rain, who, has taken, video game music and jazz to a completely different level in terms of its, when we started doing things back in the day, 2013, 2012, there were very little, especially in OC Remix, jazz remixes.
Right.
I don't want to say that the OC Jazz Collective was one of the first groups to be doing it, because clearly you can go back to groups like the One Ups and they were still doing jazz influenced music. But, 2012, 2013, there was not a lot for video game jazz.
Yeah.
Hadn't become, a standard of that, I guess, that songbook quite yet. It was well on its way. But I mean, now we have, just go onto YouTube and search video game jazz and you will see all the amazing groups like the 8-Bit Big Band based out of, I think they're New York.
Yep. Charlie Rosen.
We have groups being nominated and winning, Grammys for video game music and jazz. Like it's in a relatively short amount of time that has just skyrocketed. And I think that goes right back to that accessibility that home studios and the technology has afforded, people to be able to get their music out there. So people who were just recording on little analog recorders in their basements in 2005 are now, submitting their music for, your Grammy approval or whatever. It's,
right.
15 years. That's a blink of an eye in terms of music.
Yep. Incredible. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It's been really great to hear the album. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really can't wait to hear what's next. And I do mean that. I want to have you back on to talk more in depth about the Chrono Trigger album, because I can tell it's like meaningful to you, but also that album, the music is just so good. So we'll make that happen sometime in 2023 for sure. But thank you for talking to me about this one. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Emily.
Thank you for listening to Level with Emily. You can learn more about Dylan Wiest and the OC Jazz Collective, see a playlist, and support Level with Emily at patreon.com/level. Check out the video of our chat with Dylan. Even though there's no video there, you can still head over to YouTube to check us out. We've got a lot of videos up, and please do subscribe to the channel so you get all of our new videos, Fair New Views, as they post. I'm Emily Reese. Sam Keenan is our producer. Say hi, Sam.
Hi.
You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Level with Emily, and learn more about us at levelwithemily.com. Made possible by Adam Selvage at Tiki Web Services. Composer Brad Gentle manages our YouTube channel. Level with Emily Reese is a production of June Media, Inc. Here at Level with Emily, we're part of the Audio Podcast Alliance. It features a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. You can hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org.